On your feet! Get them going!
Good early evening, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever the case may be. Welcome to Cross Examinations Live. I'm very late today, but gosh, I had a great night's sleep. Had a great night's sleep, and then woke up and I'm like, oh, you know what? I still need an hour of sleep. So I went back to sleep for another 3 hours. Oh boy. It's great not having to actually be anywhere and do anything and just lay in bed until you have to. Well, okay, I did have to get up at some point. And then my life is a blessing. I'll admit it. Blessings, pure blood. Thank you. Yes, blessings to you as well. You know what I'm just going to do? I'm going to just get on over to Job. Since we are on such a wonky, wacky time schedule here, I don't know who's going to show up for this Bible study. Of course, Tina will. Tina is always here, right and ready for cross examinations. But as I said, and I'm starting to do this thing where as I have time, for the longest time, for those of you who don't know, which everyone in here does because it's just you guys, I'm a professional comic book artist of 33 years. I'm not a pastor, priest, rabbi, teacher, whatever. Yes, and I do excuse myself from being a deep knowledge theologian because I am not a theologian. I'm just a guy on the internet reading the Bible with my friend Edwin.
Good evening, Mr. Miller.
What happened? Have you lost your aloha, Edwin?
Well, I'm a Southerner now, so I have aloha here and there. I have aloha in my heart, just not always on my lips.
Edwin has lost his aloha.
What's a good word, brother?
Oh, the good word, life sucks. Life sucks. Or at least that's what the good word says in Job chapter 3.
Oh, Job chapter 3. Yeah. Well, even in the gospel, we're told, Christ told his followers, they hated me. Prepare yourselves.
Prepare yourselves, because life's going to suck.
Job chapter 6.
Job 3.
Job chapter 3. The KJV.
KJV in the place to be. Tina said, Job did have one sucky life. Actually, Job just had a sucky time. A season. He had a sucky season. He was super blessed before, and he was super blessed after. And yes, he had to grieve that season. But in every life, there comes some suck. And he had one Job.
Yes.
He had one Job.
He had one. You may be the worst at the moment.
Yes. So yeah, everyone out there, I mean, if you're dealing with I don't want to say Job level suck period, but if you're dealing with a suck period, I mean, look back at the times of your life that you just really loved. Like, for example, I got to sleep in today, and it was a blessing. And there might be other stuff in my life that's not going smoothly, but that doesn't matter because it's like, I mean, it matters, but man, count your blessings. Be grateful for the stuff that doesn't suck, and then just take the stuff that sucks as a lesson.
As you said, there's different seasons in our lives. And it may be that a few people will be so fortunate that they will go their entire lives without knowing any substantial sorrow. That was not the case for Job. That was not the case. That was not the case for our Savior, and that will not be the case for most people. In the modern world, assuming this audience, though, most of our sorrows will have a season. And once you can pass through that season, then you have the opportunity for something better. And you always have the opportunity to thank God and turn your heart and your eyes back to God.
Yeah. And suck season doesn't just come once in your life. I will point out, suck season is seasonal.
Yeah.
Just don't let it get you down, because there's always good there too, as Amy Lester points out.
Yeah. And it's always okay. I think part of it too is we live online a lot. Probably more than is good for us. Almost everybody is online at some point. And sometimes we can borrow misfortune when we live online. And the wonderful thing about the connectiveness of the internet, particularly if you're a creative type, is you can get an audience in a market like we have right here, though this is more of an audience. The side effect of that, though, is that in the old days, we might know one village idiot. Now all the
now we have villages full of village idiots.
Yeah, they can all come together.
They've united.
Yeah.
In force to uplift their idiot. The idiot king, we'll call him. The idiot king. I don't know what's going on, but it's not it, but not just, you know what, I'm gonna stop sharing, because maybe we're not at the point we're gonna read yet. I don't know what's going on, but not just for me. These 2 last months were really sucky. Hey, look, like take the blessings and the worst. It's I don't want to get into my personal life here for the sake of the village idiots who like to attack me for any weakness that I show. I can't show my belly online. This is the ridiculous thing. I'll share it to friends and in private, but it's we all have suck.
But yet you will show that ridiculous beard online. So welcome.
Yo, oh my gosh, this leads back to something. So Rain, who probably won't show up today because I asked her if she was a tranny yesterday in the Discord.
What?
Not in those words.
I feel like I'm missing an important part of the story.
Not in those words directly, but she was trying to say that she's trying to recategorize gender dysphoria as like a man cannot have enough muscle tone, and so he doesn't feel like he's enough of a man. And I'm like, that's not what gender dysphoria is. Gender dysphoria is specifically not identifying with your native sex, right? And I'm like, oh, so I can't grow a full beard, right? So I have gender dysphoria too? No. That's trying to muddy up the freaking definition of gender dysphoria so that you take it away from what it is, a mental disorder, and say, oh, everyone's a little gay, right? That kind of a mentality. Like, what? You can look at Ryan Gosling and say he's handsome? Well, you're a little gay, right? Oh, you can't. You have gynecomastia. You have gender dysphoria. No, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous. But thanks for bringing that up.
But there is body dysmorphia, and apparently a lot of bodybuilders suffer from that.
Yeah, that's anorexia too, right?
I think so, maybe.
Yeah, when you have an unhealthy expectation of how you should look, that too is a mental disorder. And I grant you, I could see having bitch tits giving you a mental disorder, but
I think part of the problem is, and look, hey, I've used the term like mentally ill is like a pejorative before. But some people
are mentally ill.
have experienced something, and it may not. It may not have anything
let me simplify.
to do.
Let me simplify what you're about to say. My
Sure.
son is retarded. Me calling my son retarded is not a pejorative. Me calling Ethan Van Sciver retarded is a pejorative. There's a difference in how you use the term. Mental illness is a real thing, and I feel really bad for the people that have it. But if I'm going to call John Malin mentally ill, that's just, well, actually. Maybe
Accurate.
that's striking a little too close to home, yeah.
But what I was going to say, though, is like, okay, the example of your son is perfect. Your son did not choose to be retarded.
Right.
Nothing your son did, none of your son's choices or actions made him retarded.
Right.
And so sometimes, like if you say like gender dysmorphia is a mental illness, it doesn't mean that person is a bad person. Right. Something has gone awry.
Yeah. My sister-in-law had schizophrenia. She had a mental illness. I wasn't degrading her by calling her saying she has a mental illness. It's something terrible, but it's not something that we should uplift in society and praise and encourage.
You shouldn't say we should try and find a way for people to live productive lives,
to overcome their mental illness.
And we shouldn't harm people or threaten people because they're mentally ill, right? Because now you're victimizing someone who's already been victimized by fate and fortune, right? But you shouldn't hold it up and say this is an ideal state. This is a desirable state. Right?
We should have schizophrenia parades.
Schizophrenia pride, yeah.
No.
Yeah. That's why you have Comics Gate, right?
Yeah.
An affirmation of mental illness. I know plenty of tards living kick-ass lives. That's a quote from a movie. I think it's Idiocracy.
Oh, crap.
Yeah. Tina, I'm not trying to be profane, particularly on I'm referencing.
You're being scolded from the chat.
Yeah. I just wanted to clarify. I'm not celebrating or embracing the use of profanity.
No. Pureblood said that he, God's monkey, came from going to and fro upon the earth to finding advantages to tempt men.
That's a reference to Satan going from.
Oh, yeah. God never appointed this world to be the place of man's rest, but of our exercise.
Well, he did appoint it to be the place of fellowship between him and man, but man chose otherwise.
Also, rest in God doesn't mean we stop working.
Moving. Yeah. We
stop moving. I mean, Adam was in God's rest before he sinned, but he was still tilling the garden.
And even that might be a discussion for a different day. I always think about that because, so they're given a commandment and they sinned, but could they commit evil without a knowledge of good and evil?
No, the committing of evil was the knowledge.
Yeah.
The fruit. The fruit had no intrinsic
so
brain-changing chemicals in it. It's just that breaking God's law was the knowledge of evil.
Well, it might have. Okay, because if you go back to that same passage, what if they eat of the tree of life and become like us? So it might have had some brain changing.
Well, no, they ate of the tree of knowledge and became like them, knowing good from evil.
let's go back to Genesis so that I'm not relying on my memory, because now that I'm 52, I find my memory is...
That was the astonishing thing. While the serpent, Satan, did deceive them, he didn't lie to them.
Let's see.
The curious thing. Because they did, from God's perspective, become like us. They did not die that day, but from God's perspective, a day is as 1,000 years, and they did die within 1,000 years. So it's like, and then he's the one. Oh, did God say that? And then Eve is the one who changed what God said. So be careful. That's kind of how Satan always works. He doesn't necessarily have to lie to you. He just has to deceive you. Right? And you can deceive people with the truth.
Okay, here we go. Here's what I was trying to remember. I'm gonna add a little extra. Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to the husband, and he shall rule over thee. And unto Adam he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree of which I commanded thee, saying, thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for thy sake. In sorrow thou shalt eat of all the days of thy life. Thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of thy face thou shalt eat bread, till thou return into the ground, for out of it wast thou taken. For dust thou art, and unto dust thou shalt return. And Adam called his wife's name Eve, because she was the mother of all living. Unto Adam also and to his wife did the Lord God make coats of skin and clothe them. And the Lord God said, behold, the man is become as one of us to know good and evil. And now, lest he put forth his hand, and take also of the tree of life, and eat, and live forever. Therefore the Lord God sent him forth from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from whence he was taken.
Yep. So he doesn't want him to live in his sin forever. Right? So
just 800 years.
930 years, which is just shy of the a day is as 1,000 years thing. So it's funny, God does put these little things in there so you can make sense of it. But he didn't want to live in his sin forever. He wanted to have him to be back in Eden, right? Which the new heavens and the new earth is basically a hard reboot of the universe.
Right.
So that he could, and there could be the atoning of his sin and everyone else's sin through Christ. So if he lived forever, would that mean all of his progeny would also live forever? And then everyone will always forever be living in sin rather than reboot, making the reboot home. I'm just using modern vernacular, people.
Have you tried turning it off and on?
God's going to turn the universe off and back on again. Isn't that ironic?
Well, Sodom and Gomorrah got rebooted.
Yep. Well, they got deleted. There's been no reboot.
Yeah.
All right. Is it plugged in? Yeah.
There's a Zeta. Zeta. I guess I'm saying the name right. And God gave to women their period as punishment, as the punishment of the men. May have worked both ways.
Yeah.
Directional.
Yeah. With an Indian accent.
Did the person you were having the conversation with ever come back? Or?
Oh, I don't know. She's probably still in the Discord.
Cool.
But I usually do this at noon, so
oh yeah,
4 o'clock is very late, and I have drawn and quartered tonight.
You're out of season.
I am out of season, and I've
only got about 30 minutes left myself. I've got a crypto show to do.
Oh, really? On what?
Yeah. Talking about Hive, we're going to have, so it happens in the Hive Discord, but have you ever heard of that game called Splinterlands?
Yeah.
We're going to have the founder of that, and we're going to be talking with that, and they've kind of established like a side chain for that now, so that's kind of cool, with their own validators and such.
Nice. All right, let's get to this. You get to read because you're here.
All right, I'll read, and then you just tell me when you want me to stop. So I'll read down to about 6, and then maybe I'll stop. After this opened Job his mouth and cursed his day. And Job spake and said, Let the day perish wherein I was born, and the night in which it was said, There is a man-child conceived. Let that day be darkness. Let not God regard it from above, neither the light shine upon it. Let darkness and the shadow of death stain it. Let a cloud dwell upon it. Let the blackness of the day terrify it. As for that night, let darkness seize upon it. Let it not be joined unto the days of the year. Let it not come into the number of the months.
So he's depressed.
Yes. Yes.
It's is it too soon? No, it's not too soon. But yeah, grieving is I had this conversation on Monday with Shad, because he was like saying about how his complaint about the new Daredevil show is like he doesn't think that Daredevil would react the way he did or quit everything because his best friend died. He would instead be motivated to blah blah blah. And I'm like, bro, like grieving is a hell of a drug. Grief,
yes, it is,
and all of us deal with grief completely different. I mean, not completely different, but there's a range. There's a range that. The spectrum is as far and wide as you can get. Like one person might like just crumble themselves into a little ball and sit in the corner of their room and not eat for days or weeks, right? And then someone else might freaking just rage out, right? And there's no constancy. And so there's no forecasting to how someone is going to grieve directly. And so to me, that wasn't like, it's like, and I'm bringing this, I hate to bring this all back to comic books and stuff, but like in that last not Infinity War, the one after Infinity War, the last Avengers movie, right? Where Thor's like fat and just playing video games. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, that makes total sense to me. My friend of mine, he lost his fiance when he was 19 years old and ballooned up to like at one point like 350 pounds. I don't even know how big he is now. But I'm like, that is a very, very, imagine being responsible for killing half of the universe, right? We all grieve differently, and like mocking someone or I don't know if the writers had that sort of personal thing. Job's dealing with it by saying, God, why was I born?
Grief is a potent force, and it will manifest a variety of different behaviors, and those behaviors and those feelings are not necessarily predictable and will not necessarily follow. Yeah. All right, start back with 7 here. Lo, let that night be solitary. Let no joyful voice come therein. Let them curse, in that curse the day who are ready to raise up their mourning. Let the stars of the twilight thereof be dark. Let it look for light, but have none, neither let it see the dawning of the day. Because it shut not up the doors of my mother's womb, nor hid sorrow from mine eyes. Why died I not from the womb? Why did I not give up the ghost when I came out of the belly? Why did the knees prevent me, or why the breast that I should suck? For now should I have lain still and been quiet. I should have slept, then had I been at rest. With kings and counselors.
This is a very long-winded way to say.
I wish I
was never born.
I curse the day I was born. With kings and counselors of the earth, which built desolate places for themselves, or with princes that had gold, who filled their houses with silver. Or as a hidden, untimely birth, I had not been as infants which never saw light. There the wicked cease from troubling, and there the weary be at rest. There the prisoners rest together. They hear not the voice of the oppressor.
I would pause it there, because it's this kind of like echoes the answer to like people are, why did God have every man, woman, and child killed in the Amorites or the Hivites or whatever? And it's like Job's kind of putting the fine point on. It's like, it's better for in certain situations. This is not an argument for abortion by any means, but like when you're going in and you've killed all the men, we're not living in a world where, and the whole genetic Nephilim thing aside, right? You're living in a world where if you don't have men in your town, you might as well starve. You're going to starve to death. There's no, this is 4,000, 3,000 years ago in the desert. If you have no men in your town, and like whoever decimated your men just moved along, someone else is going to come in and enslave you all, first of all. But more than likely, you're probably just going to starve to death. And so, again, that's always a tricky situation to have to deal with when you're, why did God allow that to happen? It's like Job kind of puts point on here. I would have been at rest if I died outside of my, like, if I was stillborn, or if I had died as an infant, whatever, I would be at rest, and I would be, essentially, I'd be with God instead of having to go through this grieving, which again is just a season for him. But yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I try not to get too caught up in edge cases. And I look at the general gist of things and the covenant that we live under. I don't pretend to understand all of the decisions and all of the commands that God gave to the people that he had a covenant with, that's documented in the Old Testament. Not all of it makes sense to me. The words of Christ make sense to me. But I do know that God is not the author of confusion, and if I lack understanding, that is not God's fault.
Right. And ultimately you rest back on the fact that and because it says it 100 times in Scripture, that God is just.
God is just. Yeah.
So whatever he enforces is just, right?
Yeah.
It's not to say there isn't injustice in the world, but if God is giving a command for something to happen, it's the best possible outcome.
It's the only possible outcome if God's giving a command.
Right, but that was this argument we were having in the Discord about, well, God chose this universe because before he created this universe, he could have created the universe in 100 billion, trillion, infinite different ways. But he chose this one, and in this one there's death and there's babies dying of cancer and all that stuff. And my answer was, well, what if this version is the best possible outcome? Because that would be in the nature of God. He wouldn't choose the worst possible outcome and pile misery upon misery on purpose because if there was a better way. Right? Like Christ in the if there be any other way, take this cup from me. Well, if there were any better universe, God would have chosen that one.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
All right.
There the prisoners rest together. They hear not the voice of the oppressor. The small and great are there, and the servant is free from his master. Wherefore is light given to him that is in misery, and life unto the bitter in soul, which long for death, but it cometh not, and dig for it more than for hid treasures, which rejoice exceedingly and are glad when they can find the grave. Why is light given to a man whose way is hid, and whom God hath hedged in? For my sighing cometh before I eat, and my roarings are poured out like the waters. For the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me, and that which I was afraid of is come unto me. I was not in safety, neither had I rest, neither was I quiet, and trouble came.
Why is light given to a man whose way is hid?
Yeah, meaning
Had...
given light, but it's no help.
Oh, gotcha.
Right.
Gotcha. Yep, that's a very, very long way to say, man, I wish I was never born.
This sucks.
This life sucks. Hi, Buddy is here. Let's see. Well, a more fine point might be to ask why nations existed within 500 miles of the borders of the Israel that never received a prophet on that Amorite note, or the Amalekites. Who's to say they didn't? Was Job a prophet? I don't think
Job considered a prophet. I don't think so.
But he's in the breakdown of the Bible. He's in the book of the prophets, right?
It's a fine distinction. That might be man's distinction.
But I wouldn't say that there weren't people that God spoke to around the world.
Yeah.
That's an assumption, a huge assumption.
Yeah.
And as I said before, and I say it all the time, it's like, look, these Abraham, and probably Job lived within the century that Noah died. So it's like Noah was a prophet. All of his grandchildren and great grandchildren and great grandchildren could have gone to talk to him. I'm sure he spread the gospel as he knew it to everyone he could, as a prophet would. So there wasn't a lot of wiggle room between Noah being alive and Abram being called out of the Chaldees.
Yeah.
And
Abraham and Lot were peers, but you got to think, at the time of Abraham, there was not the law, there was not this complex form of religion. You build an altar, you cut the animal's throat, and you thank God.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think Buddy's responding to that. So Jesus isn't the only way? Of course he is. The God of Israel, making exclusivity claims through the lineage of Abraham, somehow reached those unbelieving sinners on other parts of the globe. No, those without the law are a law unto themselves.
Yeah. And I think the common interpretation, and we could probably go find the verse that maybe leads to that interpretation, is that the provision of Christ, that Christ ministered to the dead in hell, and not hell as a hell. So the words for hell are kind of used interchangeably, and they're not the same thing. I mean, there's Abraham's bosom, there's Sheol, there's the lake of fire. These are not used. We use them kind of imprecisely sometimes.
Is it Hades? I thought it was Sheol.
Hades. The New Testament was written in Greek, so
All
you
right,
could look and see. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, no, God is just. God is just. God is just. God is just. I just paraphrased 4 different scriptures. And so God's justice will be meted out justly. No one will be with excuse. No one is, or is it no one is without excuse? What? How does it go? No one can be excused from being judged righteously by the righteous and just God of the universe.
And Christ told us that God cares for his creation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like the numbering of the hairs of your head. What am I thinking about? I'm thinking about a passage from Matthew specifically. Do you know what I'm... Like the birds of the field?
Right. How much more important are you than a sparrow? God knows every sparrow that falls or something like that. And how much more important are you than a sparrow?
So
He counts every hair of your head. Yeah.
So what I would say is that with a boundless and limitless creator, and we are told that the creator cares for us and he has made provision, and we may not fully understand the way that provision is applied to the people who came before it, but it stands to reason. It stands to reason that God can make for provision for people who may not have heard the name Jesus in their lifetime, right?
Right.
But Jesus is still the only propitiation for sin. That's it.
But he says, the law written on the hearts of men is after the coming of the Messiah. That's a fulfillment of the promise of the full revelation to the rest of the earth. There's a timeline distinction between.
Yes.
Right.
And what I will tell you, we have a just God, we have a merciful God. We have a merciful God, and it is possible for God to make provision through Christ.
Well, here's the thing: is that I'm not one of these. I understand that not everyone is saved, but Christ's sacrifice paid for everyone's sin.
Yes.
Whether you believe it or not, whether you accept it or not, your sin was paid for. Whether you accept that gift is whether or not you're saved.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think God knows the hearts of men far better than we do.
And I think it is well within God's power to make provision for people to accept that gift, even if they had not heard the name Jesus in their lifetime.
Right. For those without the law are law unto themselves.
Yeah.
They will be judged by what they believe is righteous. Just like Paul says, it's like, to those who believe a thing is a sin and they do it anyways, they are guilty of the sin. But if they don't believe it's a sin and they do it, then it's not a sin. That's it kind of over encompassing to, our innate conscience, our godly conscience in our how people around the world, with or without Christ or with or without Judaism or anything, have pretty much the same conscious concept of right and wrong.
Yeah, and that's C.S. Lewis wrote quite a bit about that and rather eloquently. That's worth a read at some point.
Yeah, buddy, every sin was paid for on the cross.
Some of this, Mike, I think in modernity, I think we've made a mistake, like in the way we bookend morality, like on the good and bad scale now. The bad end used to be Judas, and now it's Hitler. And I think we've lost something, because when you had the bad end being Judas, that clearly indicated a directionality, which is a rejection of Christ. And so I think we have this cartoonish, and then you've got modern people that try and say, okay, well, if you don't, if you don't reduce your greenhouse gases, then you're sinning. No.
But if you believe it's a sin and you're still riding around on a jet, then you are sinning. Or you're a hypocrite. Then why are they damned? Because they have not accepted the provision of their release.
Yeah.
You can have somebody pay your fine but still refuse to leave prison.
I think we will be surprised who we see in heaven.
Yeah. And we'll be surprised who we don't see.
But the safest course of action, Buddy Rabbit, because whatever we think or we don't think about what has transpired in the past has no bearing on the choices directly that are available to us. And the choice before us is to choose to accept Christ and share Christ with others. At an academic level, there may be some edge case where maybe you would persuade or not persuade someone, but the choice before you and before us is to turn towards Christ.
What does Jesus' sacrifice actually accomplish if those people are destined for hell, covered in the blood of Christ? I think being covered in the blood of Christ is a bit of a euphemism, right?
Yeah.
Or not
destined for hell.
It just means that the blood of Christ has paid for our sins.
I think the broad strokes of history, there certain points will be hit, right? Certain things are going to happen that are prophesized because God is not a liar. But the day-to-day things in our life are largely our decisions. And I don't believe in predestination in the general sense.
I do, and I don't. It all depends on how you define it.
I would say if predestined, if we are predestined, then you are both predestined to be here at this moment to ask these questions, and it is what it is.
All right, so if Jesus paid for the sins of all people, does that not include the sin of unbelief then? You're insisting that the cross covered for the people included in hell. That does not logically follow. Okay, I don't know how to phrase this. If you reject a gift, then you don't get the gift. I mean, it's pretty.
The point I was trying to make is I believe God has made provision for people to accept that gift if they lived in a time and place where they were not aware that gift was offered.
Right. He would know the heart of them, whether they would accept it, because he's God.
Yeah.
There's a how can you say that Jesus paid for the sins of the world, but not really? Because he did, right? Jesus paid for the sins of the world, but not really. But he did. Your position is, yeah, but not really. My position is, he did, but not all the world accepts it. Not all the world moves to the light because man loves darkness.
Yes. And the darkness comprehended it not.
Well, I know you got to get out of here early, and I know I started late, so I have a lot to do today. So, buddy keeps going. Yeah, and I don't have time. I don't have time for Discord today, buddy. So,
yeah, interesting question. So, buddy.
Yeah. Let's just go through this real quick. So, if Jesus paid for the sins of all the people, does that not include the sin of unbelief? Oh, I already did that. The receipt of grace is always the debtor. Yes, but that's not this. Faith is a gift in and of itself. Yes. So, without the gift of faith, how does anyone have faith?
Lord, increase our faith.
Yeah, there you go. That's not my position, Mike. I mean, isn't it? If you're saying that, yes, God's sin, or God's sacrifice, Jesus' sacrifice, paid for the sins of just those who accept the gift, then it kind of boils down to God paid for the sins of the world, but not really. I don't know how else. How do you? I don't have time for it today. We'll try to get back on it tomorrow, maybe. I'll try to hit the Discord today, but I'm super busy today. So, Edwin Boyett, thank you for joining us on another cross examinations.
It was a pleasure.
Everyone else, God bless you and enjoy your day, and we'll see you on the next exciting episode of Cross
Examinations.
Back in line, you dog! On your feet! Get them going!